What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. We have a massive Week 2 Sunday slate to talk through, but first, we got to slog through the Sunday night solo recap here. Falcons 22, Vikings 6. Of all the football games that ever were, that was one of them. I said this on social media at one point during the game. That felt kind of like a charming game between two middling to solid high school programs. It's almost something quaint, you know, when the sport gets distilled after like the fireworks show that we got last week. And I know nobody wants me to put lipstick on the pig. Okay. I totally get that. You know, after the fireworks show that we got last week between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, to see two teams to varying degrees trying to figure it out with their second-year inexperienced quarterbacks, as the defensive players were kind of showing out at different points here. This is one of those like, hey, don't forget those guys get paid too sort of games. But yeah, it just, you know, when you know this, when if you go to high school football games at all, you ever played high school football, any like level of investment in high school football, it can sometimes be, unless you just got, you know, like high school level Derrick Henry on one of the teams, you know, you're just mowing people down. It can just be games like that. It's a lot of fits and starts, and you're just kind of hoping, like, you know, Chris Collinsworth even said it, I think, at one point early in the third quarter, like, this game's going to break open with like a special teams return or a defensive pick six. It's like, I have been a part of too many high school games like that. And it feels, you know, just somebody's got to get a weird break on a weird play. And this did feel like one of those games. Unfortunately for the Vikings, that never happened, and they never got into this game. As always, we're going to start with the winners of this football game. And for the Atlanta Falcons, I don't have like a ton of offensive insight to throw out here. You know, for Michael Penix, obviously it wasn't the most beautiful game in the entire world. He goes 13 of 21, just barely over 61% of his passes were completed, 6.4 yards per attempt. But this is a really difficult defense to play against, obviously, in Minnesota. You've got both of your starting wide receivers coming off shoulder injuries in Darnell Mooney and Drake London. Neither of those guys pop up for anything major here. The passing game just wasn't a big part of it. And frankly, because it didn't need to be. Right away from like the first drive of this game, this was established like, oh, this is going to be one of those Bijan Robinson games. Okay. You know, Raheem Morris said, after last week's effort against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's not who we are. We don't run the football like that. Well, yeah, no kidding. You definitely didn't in this one. Over 100 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry for Bijan Robinson in this game. Tyler Algier even gets in the mix too. This is just, again, one of those where you can just put the ball in the belly of these guys over and over again. I think Tyler Algier, that last touchdown that he got, the only touchdown of the game, excuse me, I shouldn't even say the only touchdown of the game, that was one where the Vikings defense definitely let it happen so that they could try to get the ball back to their offense. A lot of good that did, by the way. These two guys are just really, really, really good NFL running backs, especially Bijan Robinson. Just an absolute freak show game from him, making something out of nothing. You know, he's one of those guys where obviously you lose a right tackle like Caleb McGarry, who's one of their better run blockers right at the start of the season, and his backup Storm Norton goes out. There was a lot of talk about that, okay, right leading up into the season. He's just so good at making people miss in these small, narrow windows that it really doesn't matter. And I definitely noticed some different layers conceptually to the run game this year, which is something I wanted to see after they were the just most kind of, I don't want to say boring, but just pretty straightforward outside zone team last year. I think they've started to mix up a few things. They've gotten the tight ends involved a lot in the blocking game this year too. So I've been excited about what I've seen out of the Falcons run game, like from a process standpoint in week 1. And then you really saw the results in this one against a Vikings defense that I think was pretty clearly going to just try to pin their ears back and hunt Michael Penix in the pocket. They were able to kind of slow play some of those with these longer developing Bijan Robinson runs. And again, he just made them pay over and over and over and over again. So shout out to him. This is why he was, to me, the second overall player in fantasy football drafts. And with the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow situation right now, like if we redrafted today, Bijan probably goes first overall. I would have to say. By the way, speaking of the Joe Burrow thing, and this will be the last thing I say before transitioning to the Vikings. I know we mentioned it later in the show with Chris Allen. Didn't have the full reporting on that. It sounds like the Joe Burrow injury might be more serious than maybe I painted it when we get to that portion of the show. So obviously just keep it dialed into the podcast and all of our Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Fantasy products over the course of the next 24, 48 hours as we try to find out more. Joe Burrow might be facing like a 3-month absence, putting him out till December. So we'll break all that stuff down. Obviously with Justin Boone tomorrow, we'll break that down on the People's Panic Meter. I'm sure we might even hopefully have news by 5 p.m. Eastern when we go live for that show tomorrow. But we put it off long enough. Let's talk about the damn Vikings in this game. All right. So I do kind of want to put some respect on the Falcons defense before I talk about the Vikings. This tweet we've got from @MySportsUpdate. Falcons defense versus JJ McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. 6 sacks, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles, one of which was lost, a 37.5 pass rating, 198 total yards of offense. The Vikings were put on a little bit of notice by this Falcons defense, which, by the way, had a better week 1 showing than I think anybody was expecting. You know, I'm willing to at least be open-minded that this Falcons defense isn't embarrassing, which, by the way, lost AJ Terrell at one point in this game. They're maybe only clear-cut above average starting cornerback right now. Watts played a really good game here. Xavier Watts, obviously their rookie, just really good overall performance by their rookie class. James Pierce Jr. got after, Jalen Walker got a sack. Bill Bowman was another rookie from this class that got an interception. This does feel like a unit that's playing fast, that's playing aggressive, pinning their ears back when they're rushing the passer, and maybe has a bit more variation in the coverage looks than we saw last year. So I'm not just going to come in here and rail on the Vikings because I do think that the Falcons defense deserves credit. Like, again, these guys get paid too. The Vikings defense, they get paid too. Brian Flores gets paid a lot of money. He's highly compensated to put young quarterbacks through the blender, and he's done so to Caleb Williams and Michael Penix in back-to-back weeks. And on this Falcons defense, I think they might be a unit to just not pencil in as an immediate, doormat for fantasy football purposes. That being said, let's rail on the Vikings here a little bit because that was a brutal offensive showing. If you were kind of crossing your fingers, hoping for some second half revival, fourth quarter magic like we saw at JJ McCarthy last week, didn't get it. Here's how the Minnesota Vikings drives went in the second half. I love reading these off on the primetime recaps. Punt, fumble, punt, interception. Boom. Game over. I don't know, man. I mean, we've had one good quarter of action from JJ McCarthy and not much else to hang your hat on right now. And it's just like they're getting off the field like so fast. Right now, I'm pretty sure this source is fully updated. Time of possession per drive right now, the Minnesota Vikings are dead last. Average drive for them lasts 2 minutes and 11 seconds. By the way, the 31st team is the Baltimore Ravens with 2 minutes and 19 seconds. I think those drives are ending a little bit differently. The Vikings are taking 2 minutes and 11 seconds to go nowhere. The Baltimore Ravens are taking 2 minutes and 19 seconds to score friggin' touchdowns. If you look at drives that end with a score, the Vikings are 27th. You look at EPA per play, they're 31st. They're just barely ahead of the Tennessee Titans, who are starting a rookie quarterback. Now, obviously, JJ McCarthy, for all intents and purposes, I don't want to call him a rookie quarterback because he's been a whole year in an NFL building, right? Like, he's not a rookie, but this is his first time getting any experience. And it just looks like, not only does it look like for the most part the game is too fast for him, except for that fourth quarter, it also just looks like he's not really getting a lot of zip on the football, And this is an offense that there's a lot of good throws to be had here. And it just, outside of a couple of moments to Justin Jefferson, there's just not a lot going on here. The Adam Thielen trade, by the way, is aging extremely well for the Carolina Panthers. He's done not a whole lot for the Minnesota Vikings at this point in his triumphant return, 2 for 26. Getting Jordan Addison back, not next week, but week 4. Is that really going to be everything, like cure all that ails them? I don't think so. TJ Hawkinson, a complete ghost in this game. Pretty concerning effort here by the Minnesota Vikings. And Kevin O'Connell looked like a guy who was exasperated at times, looked like a guy who was maybe looking back on the other side, looking over at Kirk Cousins on that sideline and thinking, remember the good old days. Look, this is a process. Like with all things, we got to be patient, got to give it time, but it's getting bleak. It's looking pretty bleak right now for Minnesota. If you have Justin Jefferson, you took him in the first round, this was the risk you took. I guess you could say the same thing for Drake London on the other side. He has not had a big pop-off game yet either, a player that I ranked 10th overall in fantasy, so I don't know everything. I'm an idiot too, don't worry. But yeah, just not a lot going right for Minnesota, especially with injuries. They're adding injuries to insult at the end of this game as well. Aaron Jones left the game with a hamstring injury. Backup left tackle Justin School, who is replacing Christian Darrisaw, and man, you felt that absence. He left the game late. Ryan Kelly, their big acquisition at center, who's got to be helping JJ McCarthy from a pre-snap standpoint, in addition to being the guy in the middle, like setting the offensive line, the protections, and just being an anchor there for him. He left the game at one point with concussions. So this is already a unit that you're hoping you're handing JJ McCarthy the keys to the Ferrari and say, hey, go drive it, kid. And not only does he not totally look ready to drive that Ferrari, you're also noticing like, oh, the transmission's off. That the back left tire is blown back there. It's not the fully operational Death Star that I think this offense was painted out to be. And like I said, when that misfire to Jalen Naylor, when you get a one-on-one open shot like that, that's all you want from a quarterback. Like just drop that thing in there and, maybe go turn the tide of that game. Maybe that turns into a touchdown, a catch and run touchdown for Jalen Naylor, who's got a little bit of speed. He misses it. JJ McCarthy does, and Kevin O'Connell just kind of looks deadpan into the camera. Hello, darkness, my old friend type of vibes there. So not great. We got to continue to track this Vikings offense and see if things coalesce around McCarthy. But right now, the signs and signals have been very bad. That's just the reality of where it is. Doesn't mean he's going to be bad forever, but right now it's bad. Things aren't looking very good outside of that magical fourth quarter against the Chicago Bears, which, man, I thought the Bears defense was going to be pretty good this year. The fact they got tore up by McCarthy in the fourth quarter and then let 50 points up to Jared Goff and the boys today, that's not looking so good either. So NFC North, it continues to be kind of a wild and weird division, especially with these two teams, Chicago and Minnesota.